Namaskar, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. This episode is specially dedicated to my SSL family because we have Mrunalini ma'am with us. Uh, well, the name Mrunalini Deshmukh is now synonymous with family and matrimonial law, and she is India's top lawyer practicing in this field of law. Like her father, she believes that lawyers have to be socially aware citizens first, and she herself has been associated with various social initiatives and organizations over the years, including the Social Service League of GLC. Welcome to the podcast, ma'am, and I'm sure that having you on the show will fulfill its purpose of inspiring our budding lawyers to strive for excellence and be more socially aware and responsible citizens.
Thank you, Shivam. Thank you for having me over. And it's always a pleasure to interact with you personally and also on such platforms. I believe you're also doing great work, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So, my first question is about where it all started. What really motivated you to pursue law? And if you could share some of your memories as a GLC student with us.
So Shivam, I think law was the only natural cause for me. My father, who was my father, my mentor, my hero, my guide, everything. He was a professor of Sanskrit and constitutional law. He was a professor of constitutional law for several years in the Government Law College. Later on, he rose to be the principal and then the vice chancellor of the Bombay University, as you know. So, right from the time, I would say that we had law for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if I may use that phrase, because my father was so motivated and so dedicated to this field of law, especially constitutional law, that we would be told, even at times when we probably did not have the intelligence or the capacity to understand much of what he was saying, but probably it was his way of drilling into us that that's what constitution, how fantastic a document Constitution of India is. And he would sort of narrate to us the interaction that he would have with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the founding father of the Constitution of India, whom he was closely associated with. And I'm told by people around me that there were very many issues where he would ask my father to come over to meet him, just to have a brainstorming session on certain things, that what in what way could we make it a very compatible and a very viable document for the country. So I think whilst we were growing up as school children, and of course we had to do our studies, we had to do everything, this was a direct reflection on us. And then I think once I graduated from St. Xavier's College after my doing my economics, I don't think there was any other choice but to go for law, unlike others who would have other things. And that's how I pursued law and joined the Government Law College post my graduation from Xavier's.
And any specific memories of college as
Oh
a
yes, oh
GLCI?
yes. I tell you, I mean, I'm sure you're a student of it, and many of this would also be able to. It's such a vibrant, dynamic college, I would say. I mean, it is something which has got a legacy, a history, and where we look up to all the past, whether it's Mr. Palkhiwala or whether it's Fali Nariman, whether it's anybody. I mean, all of them have walked those corridors of college, as which we have also walked. Of course, they've achieved greater heights. So it's a very fascinating place, very institution. Memories were that the first year when I joined college, I was asked to contest the elections for the ladies representative, which is known as a general secretary. But they had. And can you believe those days, and I'm talking about 79, we had this contest as an election as if it was like what is happening in West Bengal or just happened in West Bengal. That kind of two people, two parties, there were political sort of, support to each of us, and going, calling all the students to vote and all. That was a fascinating part of it. And happy to share that I won that election. That's what they say, with a thumping majority, and became got the post which I was vying for. That was one great experience I had, and gave me a chance to interact with students right up to third year, because I was in first year. So gave me a chance and to garner votes and support. That's where probably the flame of, sort of elections, etc., got into it. The second interesting thing, and I'm sure, I mean, Shivam, you are also aware of it, the moot court of the Government Law College is something to absolutely sort of die for, as they say, and so much to learn and so much to interact. And as you as students, or we as students, would go with starry eyes with whole lot of books and preparations and notes and argue with the plaintiff or the defendant before a sitting high court judge, expecting him to give verdict in our favor using our persuasive limited skills at those point of time. Those were fascinating experiences. And lastly, but not to miss, was the gymkhana, where after college hours, sometimes bunking classes which were not so interesting, going and playing table tennis, etc. I think that was very, very motivating for me.
Thank you, ma'am. My next question is for all the women uh, watching this podcast. I believe women have this innate ability to multitask and decide their priorities in life. And I was watching one of your recent interviews, and you mentioned there that you got married whilst you were pursuing law at GLC. And you also took a sabbatical or a hiatus for 15 years to raise your children and pursue your master's. Do you still get asked this question very often? And do you think that it is largely linked to the fact that women across all professions face this dilemma of deciding what to prioritize between their personal and professional lives? And if yes, what would be your message to them?
So I think this is one of the biggest questions that every woman, and especially once she becomes a mother, has to really juggle between seeing and the one who is a career woman. But I think each one to himself or herself, as they would call it, to decide as to what would be the priorities. So speaking for myself, at that point of time, my top priority was my children. And there were various reasons for which I felt that I needed to be at home, to be a hands-on mom, and to be with them and taking care of all their needs. And that is how it. There was a span of 15 years of sabbatical that took place. However, whilst I was doing that, a few points that were to my advantage was that I was not the primary breadwinner, nor was I a contributory breadwinner as far as the family is concerned. So that was not a necessity. But yes, it could it it could have been something which would have given me a better launch pad to do maybe the high court work, constitutional work, which was always my first love, and thanks to my father. But I had to sort of, adjust to that. But trust me, I have no regrets about it, because I feel that what I have invested in my children, those years and those formative primary years of theirs, have really, really reaped rich dividends for me. And you know both of them by now. So you know how they are. And as far as the women are concerned, quite a few women have to do this, because if they are in corporate world, or their seniority, their other chances do get marred if they take a sabbatical or they take a break. Today, of course, as you're aware, that the government has taken a lot of initiative to increase the leave post the delivery 6 months. And in fact, yesterday I also read somewhere that they are saying that those nursing mothers can also work from home for a year. So a lot of these options are being given to women who are basically working mothers also, so that they do not have to really compromise with the bringing up of the children. Secondly, and more importantly, I also understand that we do have infrastructure in place for the babies to be taken care of while their mothers are working. May not be to the best of the facilities as we have overseas, but to a large extent they are available. So I think some women who can afford to do that, and afford, I'm not talking in terms of money, but who are able to do that, should opt for it, because there should not be compromises on their career without compromising on the child. But I tell you, trust me, as a woman, as a mother, as a professional, I can tell you, it's really a jugglery that one has to do. You're really walking on a tightrope. Only a one who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. That's what they say. And that's exactly what happens to a lady who has to sort of balance between the work, the children, and the other essentials which are there. So my advice would be, you have to take your facts and circumstances into consideration, see what is best, and find a blend or find a mid path which will take care of both the concerns that you have, a as a mother, and b as a professional, or if you're doing a job, whatever you're doing, so that you are not compromised for that. But I think, yes, women, I mean, you say, but women do end up sacrificing a lot of things, and they do it so willingly, and they do it so they do it because they really want to do it, and they take a back foot, if I may use that word, but that's for the larger good of the family. I think that's what Indian family system is all about.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering that question. And I'm sure that it will inspire our female audience uh, to decide their priorities better based on, their circumstances. My next question is about the fact that you chose family law and matrimonial law as a field of specialization. So, was there any specific reason or consideration for you to consider this area of law as your field of specialization, ma'am?
So one word which I can surely say is destiny. Probably I was destined to be in the way that they are. Uh, and more importantly, on a more practical and to give you a very honest and candid answer, after the sabbatical that I took for nearly 15 years, though I pursued my master's in law and I was teaching as they call it, as a visiting professor at the Department of Law, which was once a week for an hour or so. Uh, to get back to practice was something which I always wanted to do that. It was just when should it happen and how it should happen. And this was the time when we shifted to Bandra, which is where I'm currently residing. And as luck would have it, or as destiny, one would say, the family courts had started in Bandra in the year 8990. Which is just a lane parallel to where I live. As a result of which, I after gave it a lot of thought, and I said that if I and my kids were still studying in school, so they would go to school around 8:30 and would be back by 2:33, and I the mother in me always wanted to be around when the kids came home. So I mean that was one of the things that was always there. So as a result of which, what kind of practice can I do if I go to the high courts? Commuting is going to take me 1.5 hours. There's no way I'm going to come back by 3:30. So again, somewhere I thought about it, kept the fact that my children had to be attended to, and I said, let me try family court. And trust me, and this started by just one afternoon. I just walked across, went to the courts, had a look of all the 7 floors. It was there. Absolutely stranger, not knowing you, because you are entering a court after 15 years. It's as good as, a lifetime. And just going there, and I said, this is something which is possible. Should I try that? And that is how I chose to do it. Because and then initially, as you know, as a young lawyer, as a struggling lawyer, you hardly get one case or two cases, and then you don't have to spend hours in court. You're just back home in a couple of hours. So I was able to do that, and by which time, when the kids came home, I was at home. At the same time, couple of hours or 3 hours, I was in the court, either attending to my matter, which was one or two at that point of time, or listening to other matters which is going on, just to get the feel of it, the pulse of it, so that probably when I get into it full time, I would be able to learn and do it better. So that's how I chose matrimonial law and started working on it, and learned, made mistakes, lost cases, won cases. So it's a whole gamut of things that happen, and learned a lot. Let me put it that way. Winning and losing cases as a lawyer, is not in your hands, but learning from them and taking it as an experience, a learning experience, is what I gained a lot, and I think that's what helped me in the long run.
That is so inspiring, ma'am. And also the fact that when you came back, you did everything on your own. You didn't join the chambers of any seniors. Well, whilst initially you worked with the former then Advocate General, Mr. Advin Bopte, but when you came back, you decided to practice on your own and do everything, right from the scratch. So how did you manage to do all of it when juniors generally look for guidance and mentorship from seniors, especially in the initial years?
So, Shivam, it sounds very, very, it's very funny, but I didn't even know how to make a recipe for adjournment or any of those things which was there. But I can tell you one thing, and this is what I really owe it to the staff of the family court. That's really like a family. Those were the people, those were the clerks who were in the filing department, clerks who were the judicial associates or the judicial clerks who were there, or there were the shirastedars, as we call them. We just went to them and asked them, Madam, how do I do this? This is what the judge has said. And she would, in her own way, tell us that this is what you need to do, get a form from there, write this. So they have been really my teachers. I mean, I didn't have a senior whom I was working with anybody's chamber, but these people really helped me to understand the basics. And once I got the know of it, then obviously I had a little background. I'd worked for 2 3 years, so I knew about it. But yes, they helped me, and I really owe it to them. I went to a filing department, and you file a petition and they say that there's a technical objection. Oh my God, what is a technical objection? So then she would tell me that this is a law, this is a section of law, you've not put this, you've not put that. That's how I learned. And I think I owe a lot to them. And rest, I
And
think.
and your persistent hard work and efforts have today made you India's top lawyer. And I also therefore wanted to ask that when you now look back, at your glorious career, uh, what are some of your biggest learnings that you would like to share with our budding lawyers?
So I think, Shivam, one thing is very important that we need to understand, that family law is different from any civil, commercial, criminal law. So that kind of litigation is a completely different litigation, because in this case you are dealing with individuals, humans, their lives, their emotions, and their family. So obviously the approach has to be completely different from what you as a corporate lawyer or you as a civil litigation lawyer would do in a given set of cases. Okay, there is law in place, there is procedure in place, but what is it in place that you have to understand? You're talking about the human lives. So in my understanding, more importantly, what is really important is extreme sensitivity in dealing with these cases, whilst you're dealing with it, without getting involved in the matter, without identifying with the client, at the same time maintaining the sensitivity of the situation. Secondly, I think a lawyer tends to, to take extreme steps. I'm representing a client and you're representing the other client. I take extreme steps. But I think a family lawyer, a lawyer who practices family law and matrimonial law, has to take a very balanced view, because it cannot be a view that in favor of your own client you are destroying the larger setup, which could be the other side, which could be the husband, which could, or the wife, or which could be the child, as the case may be. So somewhere a very balanced approach has to be taken. Lastly, I mean, more importantly, as a family lawyer, and I think this is what I need to tell young lawyers, because I see some of the young lawyers, they are very enthusiastic, very hardworking. I'm talking with the who want to do family law, but they want to also please their clients. Now, never ever make a mistake of pleasing your client. Your client will come back to you only if you give him or her a correct advice to the best of your knowledge and ability. Because do not worry, you do not have to please a client to get clients. Your work will get you work, and your work will be recognized, and that will be a word of mouth, and you will get it. So I have to, at this message I really want to convey to to all the juniors lawyers, or budding family lawyers, that please maintain the dignity of being a lawyer, of giving a correct advice and not pleasing your client, because that does not help you in the long run. Secondly, and more importantly, the effort of every family lawyer or who practices family law is to ensure, to the best of her or his ability, to bring the warring couples together. People come to you as a lawyer in a heat of the moment, or their egos are clashed, or their anger erupts and things which are there. You need to first calm them down, and you need to tell them that you cannot think of an extreme step now. If you want to do, I will do that because that's my job, but think it over, breathe, calm down, understand everything, and then we can do it. Because if you are going to fuel the anger, or the ego clash that has happened, that's not good for the client, not good for you as a lawyer also. You need to make them understand everything, put it on a platter for them. These are the pros and the cons if you fight, these are the pros and the cons if you come together, these are the pros and the cons if you settle the matter amicably. Now, I would advise you either come together, but if it's difficult, then at least do it amicably. Litigation should be the last resort, that should be told by a lawyer. Sounds very ironical or strange that the lawyer should not prescribe or advise litigation, but Believe you me, in these kind of matters, this, in my view, and this is what has helped me, would be the correct advice to be given to the clients who come to you in a very agitated state of mind. And lastly, and more importantly, there's no greater joy for a lawyer than to see the warring couples come together and express their gratitude for giving them a correct advice and keeping their family intact. I think that gives a great high to any lawyer, and for me, the greatest high. I think that's what I would like to tell the young lawyers. And of course, and lastly, and not lastly, but I think the most important thing, there is no substitute to hard work. There is no substitute to working, attending sessions, attending seminars, learning, absorbing, and also reading up law and presenting yourself to the best of your ability. No substitute to hard work.
Thanks so much, ma'am, for putting it out there. And another question that I wanted to ask you, because you are so much involved with so many social initiatives, is that how important it is for law students and lawyers to be engaged in community service and have values of empathy and compassion. And of course, GLC is privileged to have you as the chief advisor of the Social Service League. You have personally seen the students' work, but this is largely for students and lawyers.
I think that's a very good question, Shivam, and I think only a very sensitive person like you can ask this question because you have been in the Social Service League, and I've seen you working so selflessly and for the organization and getting, whether it be in terms of holding lectures, whether in terms of holding all those bazaar melas to raise funds or whatever. I mean, you have done a great job, and you've been, I'm sure, one of the inspiring people for the Social Service League. I think compassion, a thought for the other, community service is something what makes you a great human being first and foremost. These are the values that you should cherish as a human being. These are the values as a parent I would like to inculcate in my children, or I try to inculcate in my children. And these are the values that help you to in any kind of profession, whether you're a lawyer or whether you are any other profession. That is point number one. Secondly, community service is an awareness of the social responsibilities. Is so very important for two reasons. Number one, you have to give back to the society. And number two, that makes you realize how privileged you are and to be grateful for what you have. And the greatest joy is of sharing and not of hoarding. And that is where I believe if one realizes that sharing gives you greater joy than hoarding what you have, I mean, that's going to be very important in the long run. Thirdly, and more importantly, that makes you a good human being. And I think the biggest qualification that anybody can have, whether he's a rock star or whether he's a lawyer or whether he's a musician, is to be a good human being at the end of the day. And I think these are our traditional Indian values, which we cherish as a family, pass on to generations, and then it spreads in the community. So I think absolutely, I think must to have that. And especially, I think these are very important even for a lawyer practicing family law, to have that compassionate sense of approach towards the a particular matter that comes to you.
Thank you, ma'am. And before I move on to the last question of asking you some more parting words of wisdom, I actually wanted to ask you about your experience of virtual courts, especially, I don't know if you have uh, appeared or if family courts are functioning virtually, but generally of any virtual hearings. And also, do you think that virtual courts are here to stay post the pandemic?
So two things. The family courts did have. I had a couple of hearings in the family court, but to be very honest, in my matrimonial matters, I had more of virtual hearing at the High Court and more at the Supreme Court level. So I think virtual courts were very comfortable. They were very good. The judges were very patient. I'm talking about the Supreme Court and the High Court judges. They would give you all the time to express yourself. Sometimes connectivity was a problem to somebody. Sometimes some issues were there. But virtual courts were a very comfortable option rather than not having, or rather than not working during the pandemic at all. Secondly, are the virtual courts here to stay? Uh, I would say partly, not 100%. But Shivam, can I tell you, probably belong to the old school of thought. But the fun of going and arguing in the court personally, stacking your books with your files and trying to persuade a judge, I think that's a different kind of a high that you get. Love that also. So I would not like to give up completely in-person appearances, as they call it. But virtual courts have been a good substitute to a large extent, and in most of the cases, it could be done because I feel now, for example, I was appearing in the Supreme Court in 5 or 6 matters in the last 5 or 7 months. I mean, see the cost also that is involved for a client if he has to fly me down and get all those things done. It cut down everything. See the time that I saved. I could appear in the Supreme Court, and maybe in the afternoon session I could appear in my High Court also, or attend to my other conference also. So it saved my time, it saved my energy. I was able to deliver my goods in the court, as they call it. And lastly, and more important, it saved the cost for the litigant also. So I think it was good, and I would surely say that that is a good option. But I don't think we should be only completely virtual. Maybe we could do it, partly virtual and partly where you person. At the end of the day, Shivam, I would love to meet you in person. This is also fine, but I would love. It's always a pleasure to meet you in person. So that's the basic difference. Maybe I come from an old school of thought, but that's what I feel.
No, ma'am, even I agree with you. Um, and but I agree also to the fact that hybrid virtual courts, partly physical, partly virtual, should be the way forward. And lastly, although you have already, shared so many things which our law students can take, but any specific parting words of wisdom or advice for our law students watching this show?
So Shiva, in my span now, I've been this practice for the last 18 to 19 years. In my span of practice, I have noticed that increasingly a lot of lawyers are now opting for family law than what it was 10 or 15 years back. I have got juniors working with me who've quit their corporate jobs, in corporate law firm jobs, and come and done that when they were doing acquisitions, mergers, and all those. And all of a sudden they want to do a domestic violence case, or they want to do a custody case. So I do ask them that what is it that is bringing about this switch over. So I guess it's just that you see the numbers that are going up. There is a lot of attention which is being given to a lot of these family cases when you see in the media, print media, electronic media, social media, etc. Then, and the number of cases that are going up, people feel that this is the field that they would now like to really do. Because when I started, to tell you very honestly, the concept of a divorce lawyer was not something that was looked upon in with, oh, divorce lawyer, she doesn't know much about anything else, and so that's what it is taken. Today times have changed. Today, in a way, family law, matrimonial lawyers are the most sought after lawyers today because of the cases and because of the situations which are around. So my only advice to all these people are that, of course, you can practice whatever kind of law that you want to practice, but always see there is a great difference between any kind of law and family law. And I've said that earlier also, nothing more to add.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you for taking out time and agreeing to do this. I just want to share a little anecdote. When I came to your chambers for the very first time, I think it was almost 7 years ago, and we came with a proposal of a project that we were going to do, and I was really scared because we have heard so much about you, and then there were appointments back to back, and we were wondering, how much time we are going to spend and will we be able to convince ma'am. But since the time I've met you till today, every time, ma'am, it's a pleasure to interact with you. And we are always, everybody, I think, in GLC and SSL are inspired by your kindness and your constant encouragement to all of us. So thanks so much for taking out time on a Sunday evening and answering these questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shivam. Thank you for having me over. It was always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you and lovely sharing my thoughts with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.